Enter the world, but tread with care. Those roots remember every prayer. Carved from ash, from bone, from flame. The sacred beasts don't play your game. Here change comes, swift on silver wing, with dragonflies that bite and sting. Truth flickers soft and sharp as steel, and every wound must learn to heal. Don't come armed with hollow lore. This world won't let you fake the war. For those who think they understand, you'll bleed the fastest by your hand. So read and ache, be torn apart. These stories rise from broken hearts. With grit and teeth they scream and soar. You've never known a world like this before.
Welcome to Dhampir Sins, Book 1 of the Sacred Beast series by Sarah Yuher. 14. A Bite Too Far. Kieran. The paramedics were unhappy with Kieran for declining medical services, and Maverick's backup wasn't happy with him leaving the scene before they could get his statement. Thankfully, Reynolds let him go once he heard the live feed from Kieran's phone to his CGH. Reynolds also gave Kieran a ride back to his apartment, sirens and lights going to announce their arrival. There were already cops and an ambulance when they arrived, and the color bled from the world as Kieran embraced the shadows. He climbed the side of the building through the shadows, moving faster than if he had just run up the steps. Pain pierced his head as weariness fought with adrenaline. He entered his apartment through his bedroom window and went straight for the front door, leaving the shadows and opening the door. The scent of blood filled the hallway, and Kage was already on a gurney, paramedics surrounding him. Bruises covered what Kieran could see as he moved to the gurney. When a hand grabbed Kieran's shoulder, he turned, grabbing the wrist of the officer. The sound of the crack was muffled to Kieran's ears. The only clear sound to him was of Kage's labored breathing. More hands grabbed him, pulling him from the officer and slamming him to the ground. Kieran hissed and struggled against the officers, snapping at them when he felt the cold, enchanted steel of cuffs blocking him from his magic. "Get these off me," he screamed. "Cool your jets, boy," Reynolds said as he knelt before Kieran. "The incubus fed on you, didn't he?" Kieran hissed, his fangs extended and aching. They stared at each other, the human calm in the face of the angry Lurisran Furion. "He broke Officer Allen's wrist," someone said. "I warned you an angry Furion Shadow Walker was coming," Reynolds said, looking away from Kieran and at the officer who had him pinned to the ground. "Remember the Nephilim Pact. Nephilim feed on our sins, and if we help them, we become their guardian." Reynolds got the officer off Kieran and led him from the apartment building. "Where are you taking me?" Kieran asked, his voice low and controlled. "You broke an officer's wrist. You're under arrest. Let's get you booked so you can get to the hospital." The back seat of Reynolds' car was uncomfortable, made more so by Kieran's impatience to get the booking done and over with. "What happened?" Kieran finally asked. "That's not your concern right now," Reynolds said. "I'm his guardian. You're also in trouble yourself. Trouble that I'll deal with, along with helping him deal with whatever trouble he's in," Kieran growled. Reynolds was quiet for a time. "He bit a human," he finally said. "From what I heard on your CGH, it's safe to assume that the human male was in a domestic dispute with the human female, and Kage interfered. If you recorded it, that will help Kage." "Steve's always yelling at Echo," Kieran said, looking out the window at the passing buildings. "There's a record of calls to the police about it." "How do you know?" "I'm the one who made the calls. The police just never did anything." It was true that Kieran had called the cops numerous times to report a domestic disturbance at Echo's place. They never did anything because Steve was calm when they arrived, and Echo would back him up. If Echo had been a werebear, Kieran could have handled it himself, but she was human, and Kieran's hands were tied. "Did your CGH record everything?" Reynolds asked. "Yes, same with my phone." "Smart. It's common among shifter groups. When the adults shift for the full moon, the kids need a way to contact them in emergencies," Kieran explained. The booking process was relatively painless, and Kieran was given his chance to call the family lawyer, who called his mother because that's what someone does when their cousin's son is being booked for assault on a police officer. Kieran had a court date for himself the next week and was taken off the case for the missing Dhampirs until that was resolved. He was also given the information for Kage's court date involving the assault on a human. Kieran couldn't get any information on the situation with Echo and Steve, except that Steve was stitched up and sitting in a jail cell with multiple charges. As Kage's guardian, Kieran could have charges pressed on the human on Kage's behalf. If nothing could be done about the domestic abuse with Echo, he could at least get Steve away from her by pressing charges for the beating Kage had suffered. The clawing Kieran had received from the demon dog was finally looked at by a medic. Silver eyes flecked with blue marked the man as an angelic Nephilim. His healing magic closed the worst of them, and he bandaged the rest, giving Kieran orders to find a blood donor. Police protocol prohibited Kieran from consuming blood in the jail, except in life or death circumstances. It was dawn when Kieran made it to the hospital. He was swaying as he stood at the front desk, asking the nurse where Kage was. His father was with him, the giant man dwarfing him and radiating an air of disapproval. Kage looked tiny in the hospital bed, and he was covered in bruises that looked days old instead of hours. His lip and eye were swollen, and the lower lip split open. One arm had a cast on it, and the other was cuffed to the bed's railing. "How much did he feed off of you?" Oren asked softly as he sat in one of the chairs to one side of the room. Kieran glanced at his father as he sat in the chair next to the bed. "He bit me twice today," he answered. His father pointed out, "You don't heal that much damage after 2 feedings in one day." "He also incited and fed off sin in me," Kieran finally admitted after a moment of silence, avoiding his father's gaze. Oren sighed. "Have you told Lacey? Did Mom tell you what she called him earlier today?" "Well, yesterday now," Kieran said as he glanced out the window. A yawn cracked his jaw, reminding him he hadn't had any sleep yet. "She did. It does not change that you were unfaithful. I'll talk to her about it after I explain to Kage why what he did was wrong." "Are you sure you love Lacey?" Oren asked bluntly. A sex Nephilim can't incite infidelity in someone who is truly committed to another. Kieran growled at his father. "Did Mom put you up to this?" "Your mother doesn't have to put me up to anything when I've agreed with her since the day you brought that girl home to meet us," Oren said, resting his chin on his fist. He watched Kieran with intense sapphire eyes, making him squirm under that gaze. "I love her." A squeak drew their attention to Kage, who looked stricken as he tried to wiggle out of the cuff. Kieran felt like he had been shot when Kage flinched away from his hand when he reached out to calm him. "I'm going to grab some coffee," Oren said, rising from his seat and leaving the room. Kieran watched his father leave before he turned his attention back to Kage. "How much did you hear?" he asked. "That the big man doesn't like someone Aaron doesn't like," Kage answered in a tiny voice, whimpering when he tried to curl up more under the thin white sheet. "And that you love that person." "My parents don't care for Lacey," Kieran said softly. Kage pulled at the cuff on his wrist. "I feel funny," he whimpered. "It's blocking you from your magic," Kieran explained, reaching out and touching Kage's hand. The incubus flinched, but Kieran held his hand gently and firmly. "Calm down." He was hurting her. And I pressed the button. And his blood tasted sour. Kage was shaking as he struggled against the cuff. His words trailed off into great hiccuping wails, the machines beginning to make loud noises as his heart rate spiked with his panic. "Shoot," Kieran said, sitting on the side of the bed beside Kage and using one hand to make him look him in the eye. His crimson and silver swirled eyes were wide with fear. The pupils dilated with whatever Steve had in his blood. "I'm here." "Breathe, Kage." Kieran breathed in and out with Kage, speaking encouraging words softly to the panicked incubus. A nurse came in and froze when Kieran glared at her, flashing his fangs and pulling Kage closer to him. The cast on Kage's arm was hard against Kieran's chest, but his fingers managed to grip his shirt. He buried his face into Kieran's neck, and a moment later, he felt the sting as Kage bit down. Kieran winced and swayed as dizziness crashed into him like a wave. His vision blurred at the edges, and he heard a commotion in the room as he started to fall forward.
13 souls stolen, one rescued from the refuse. A man barely past a boy, raised by bears of blood-soaked oaks. As love grows distant, cotton candy tastes so sweet. Lust and love, what's the difference? The badger jokes and steals, the world sneers and scorns. Blamed for their father's sins, innocent hearts drown in Dhampir sins.